Okay, ready to start. Sorry for being a bit late. I'm at least in Vappu time zone, which is a bit lazier, and I'm feeling good. I hope you guys are feeling good as well. Yes, at least one is feeling good here. I might have burnt my nose today, which is a bit embarrassing. Haluatko joku sulkea oven siitä? Okay. Hope everyone has found their place. Reminder, no eating in this place. Yes, it's too late for some of you. Ja sitten vaihdan suomeksi. Oliko joku, jolla on käännökset tänään täällä?
Yes, I'm switching to Finnish. Is there any need of translation today?
Kuuluuko?
If yes, I'll ask if you can hear the interpretation. Yes, good. Thursday to everyone. It's 24th of April. So, opening the meeting at 6 minutes past 5. Opening item 2. Regarding members who are eligible, resigned, qualified and present. So, Executive Director, if you may.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja. Eli perinteiseen tapaan.
Yes, thank you. Let's start with Aallon kokoomus.
Rimpio ja myöhässä. Elo. Ikävalko. Kiitos. Joo, ei ollut muita. Kem, Palo. Myöhässä. Vuorela. Kosonen. Kylterirengas, Plinnikka. Myöhässä vai pois? Joku tilalla. Selvä. Karppinen. Tuomi. Palmqvist. Niemitoni. Myöhässä. Kiitos muita teiltä. Veisin näyttäisi olevan joo. Sen verran oppinut jo tässä vuosien aikana nimiä. Konergia, Erkkilä, Seppälä. Kiitos. Erityismaininta Konergia oli täsmällisesti 17.00 penkeissä istumassa.
A special mention, Konergia was here exactly at 5 p.m. sharp. So thank you for that.
Luoma, Jäntti, Kolehmainen, Kanniainen. Kiitos. ProArte Korpua. Shield. Myöhässä. Niinpä sain lukeekin. Teiltä muita. Varmistan myös merkinnyt, että Carlos Perez Moreno.
So making sure Carlos Pereiros has graduated. Okay. So the deputy member no longer a deputy member since they have graduated. Point to Skisma. You have no own representatives, but you have handed your seat to Yhden tähden liike, I believe. We'll get back to that later.
Vapaasti vasemmalla Hintsala.
Vapaasti vasemmalla Hintsala.
Poissa paikalla Turkulainen, kiitos. Saarni, Tuokkola, kiitos. Muita teiltä? Ei muita. Vihreämpi Aalto, Manninen, Kolho, mainiota. Pyhälammi myöhässä, ilmeisesti, joo. Välillä paikalla. Ja Määttä, yes, näyttää samalta määrältä. Vooga, Branders, Corner, Keskinisula, Tak ja Yhden tähden liike Kahilainen, kiitos. Puheenjohtaja näin ollen.
Dear Chair.
26 vähintään nyt saattaa olla, että Yhden tähden...
At least 26 represented present. Maybe our Excel doesn't recognize Yhden tähden liike representative, but at least 26, which means that we have a quorum. Yes, also recording those who are unavailable, disqualified, ineligible, resigned, and present, and also the deputy members. And during the roll call, we stated that we have at least 26. Yes, actually we have 29 representatives present. And the executive director checked. We have quorum, and we also grant the right to speak and to be present to AYYE employees, board members, oath members, and the interpreters. If no one objects, we can decide this and close item 2 and move to item 3, recording the legality and quorum of the meeting. According to our regulations, a representing council convenes by the invitation of the chair, and further, according to regulations, the invitation to the meeting must be sent at least 7 days prior to the meeting. Further, according to our regulations, the representing council has quorum when there are at least 25 representatives present and the chair or vice chair of the RepCo. And me, the chair of the RepCo, has sent the invitation to the meeting 7 days prior to the meeting. And we have more than 25 representatives present. So the meeting has been lawfully summoned and has quorum. Closing item 3, moving to item 4, election of 2 minutes inspectors and 2 vote counters. Ilmavirta, do you have any proposals for this? Yes. I have drawn lots, and we do it so that it tries to kind of have the kind of people who have not yet acted as minutes inspectors or vote counters. So, for minutes inspectors, Branders and Kanniainen, vote counters, Ikavalko and Vuorela. And as before, they can act as each other's deputies.
Branders?
Branders?
Se kysymys oli, jos on jääviä, eli käytännössä viime vuoden...
They ask if they're obstructed. Even if you are a board member and will be discharged from liability, that does not obstruct you from inspecting the minutes. But we may use the deputy minutes inspector for this one item if you feel that is necessary. Okay, any further comments on this? Apparently not. So congratulations to those who have been selected. So Branders and Kanniainen will be elected as minutes inspectors, and Ikavalko and Vuorela will be their deputies, and for vote counters, Ikavalko and Vuorela, and their deputies, Branders and Kanniainen. This has been decided. So closing item 4, moving to item 5, approval of the meeting agenda. I have sent you the agenda with the invitation to the meeting, Appendix 5. So I propose that we will approve this agenda as the meeting agenda. Any comments? Opposition? No? So yes, we'll decide thus. And closing item 5 and moving to item 6, announcements. Any announcements to make?
Ei näytä ilmavirta.
Ilmavirta?
Jottei tämä nyt aivan tyhjäksi kohdaksi jäisi, niin...
Yes, to have at least one announcement, I'll say that next week we have Vappu, May Day.
Loistavaa.
Excellent.
Itse ainakin olen innoissani.
I'm very excited for it.
Siltä se kuulostaa.
As you can hear, as we can all hear from your voice.
Kiitos.
Yes, thank you.
Ilmoitusasioita
Any other announcements?
ei näytä olevan.
No. Okay. Ropponen. The interpreters cannot hear what Ropponen is saying.
Mukava kuulla.
But it was something that is nice to hear.
Veikkaan, että edustajista tarvitsee tulkin olotiloistani.
The interpretation council might need an interpreter for my emotions, if you can tell that I am excited for these announcements. Yes, any other announcements? Apparently no, so closing item 6. And moving to item 7, latest news from the office. And Nykänen will present this. Hello everyone. Let's move on. So, for first about communications, the municipal regional elections are now over, and we had a successful campaign. Then we also have gathered Vappu events on the vappu.fi website, and if some events are missing, you can let us know and we'll add them. And the charity fundraising, we've done communication regarding that. For Nyti. Then we had an opinion piece on the income of students, had a blog post on students' mental health, also are starting an action plan project. In April, we had some April Fools, and also had event communications on our AYYE 15, etc. We also reached 7,000 followers on Instagram recently. We have had a lot of good media coverage on Helsingin Sanomat and Länsiväylä. Then, for administration, the Central Election Committee has started the preparations for the upcoming REPCO elections. The voting will be open from the 30th of October until the 6th of November, and nomination of candidates is open for about a month in August and September. A more detailed schedule will be available at the end of April, and there will also be an information package about the elections at the next REPCO meeting. Then for the community, the trainings are now ongoing. Tomorrow we have this Eläköön ylioppilaskunta event in Marsio, and then the association's operating grant application round is coming up in May. Otaniemi's own Cinemas Cheryl, opened in Marsio. Vappu is approaching, so many events. For example, Aalto Open Air, Vappuvaihto, where Tampere people will come here. Then we have Tour de Valpuri, and also Vappu Brunssi, so a brunch. And the declaration of the Vappuriaha. And of course, then we have the Dipoli Vappu on the May Day Eve. Then about advocacy, well, the elections are over. We had a successful campaign behind us. We had an election panel, campaign event, and voting event. We've met with 8 councillors and released 3 statements. Then the government framework meeting is now going on this week. We're keeping a close eye on that. Then we worked on the policy paper with the advocacy committee, had also a statement on the electronic certificate, that is the graduation certificate, and also influenced Syllö's student healthcare policies and influence Aalto's course surveys. Then for member surveys, the autumn booking calendar for our one-time rental facilities, will open next Tuesday for everyone. Then the campus section renovates Korsu. That will happen from 4th August until the 31st of October. So it will not be available for use, but then it will be very fantastic after the renovation. Then for housing, we let the cornerstone of the Otakari 15 building, and the project is going on excellently. It is well in schedule. We had 150 these donuts, and all of them were eaten, and then we also put this capsule there underneath the cornerstone. Then for the board, we met with the Aalto president management team on the 17th of March. We had some recreational event for the office. Also attended the Guild of the Round Towers annual meeting. Also attended the Teekkari meeting. Then we had this home crawl where we visited each other's homes, and also had an April Fool's prank, which is here in the photo. Then we had the election event with the entire board, tried to activate the students to vote, met with the Tokyo board on the 7th of April, and also a Jäynä finale and Apy Gala. And last Monday we had an excursion to Malmi, and then we have the laying of the cornerstone of Otakari 15 on the 16th of April. And then some topics from the board's agenda. Yeah, couldn't see it myself, okay. So we awarded our acknowledgements and deeds for 2025. Then also had this statement, Espoo don't waste international expertise. Then we also approved of the students are the heart of Otaniemi statement. The board also accepted and signed the 2024 financial statement. We discussed the applications for SYLS committees, authorized CFO Kivi Virta to sign the agreement with Osuuspankki regarding our credit limit group account. Discussed about the vision for higher education research 2040, discussed about the future of the central office, and about the implementation of the ecological sustainability action plan, checked the volunteer minutes from QI, accepted the statement on electronic degree certificates, discussed the AI survey for students, nominated a representative to new this spring meeting, and also planning Minister Mykkänen's visit to Otaniemi on the 30th of April. Thank you. Any questions? Vice Chair, would you like to hand over the microphone? We can start with Vihreämpi Aalto.
No niin, lämpeneeksi? No niin. Yes, Määttä, Vihreämpi Aalto.
Määttä from Vihreämpi Aalto. Thank you, Nykänen, for this great presentation. It's very nice to hear that the board is doing all kinds of things, also doing representational things. I understand very well when there's new information that the board wants to kind of gather its ranks. But I believe that the representatives also have the right and the obligation to hear about these latest news and events regarding AYYE. So I hope, especially in these very important issues, that they would be presented to the representatives kind of at a different level of magnitude, these important things, than just, for example, visiting Apy Gala. And also maybe more details on the Malmö excursion. Yes, the Malmö excursion, we checked what the Malmintori business space looks like.
Läpikuultavassa toiminnan tarkastuksessa tullut selväksi, tai oikeastaan ilmi paremminkin, niin käytiin katsoa ja mietitään.
So we checked what it was like and tried to find solutions for that, what to do with, how to use it. It's kind of a burden there now. Yes, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Is it related to this?
If it's the same topic, then you can continue from there. Yes, could you clarify what size of business facilities are we talking about? Is this Jander's closet or some larger business premises, so that we have an understanding of what scope of thing we're looking at? About 1,000 square meters.
Selvä.
Okay. Is there anything related to this topic? Any other further questions or comments, or in general about the greetings from the office? Volga, go ahead. Volga, Branders. We're excited to hear about what kind of programming you're talking about with the visit with Mayor. I don't remember anything about the details about the agenda of what we have planned, but the idea was to show Sakke, if you want to go ahead, if you have more details. Yes. Just briefly, I can summarize the idea. First of all, the idea is to have him visit the museum, show him a little bit about what the cultural history looks like in Otaniemi, and if the weather is good, then we'll also visit Sahat and Marmori as well, visit to the Tekarikylä, the Tekari village, and of course, after a brief visit to the museum, we will also have the speech itself at the May Day event, after which we would then have him visit the Tekarikylä eventualities. That is the general agenda for the visit. Apologies, if you can also tell the chair how you will, what was it, Marmoni was the type of transportation.
Onko muita kysymyksiä?
Any other questions?
Päätellen puheenjohtajan kysymyksestä, niin jos muitakin
judging by the question from chair, what the Marmoni car is, this is to my understanding, an old car which was a museum car previously owned by Marshal Mannerheim, where from a time period when cars were partially made from wood and have to have their components constantly replaced because the old wood is rotting. So this is something that the student council also owns. Fantastic. We'll make sure to keep that in mind for the chair's transportation in the future as well. Any other questions related to the tidings from the office? If there's nothing else, then I will interpret as such that we can move on the agenda, and I will recommend that we note and decide that these tidings have been provided as notification, and moving on to item 8 on the agenda, which will be for the financial statements and the management report for 2024, and Kirjata will be presenting this to us.
Mä käännän sitten taulun tänne päin, niin mä näen jotain.
I'll make sure to turn the monitor a little bit towards me so I can see it myself as well.
Eli ajattelin, että käydään.
So I was thinking of having us take first a brief look at a presentation regarding the principles of the financial statements and the ideas from the 2024 result and figures. I also have some questions from the Aalto Kokoomus, and of course I can respond to any other questions that you may have at that point. I hope that you have had time to take a look at the financial statements yourselves as well. But first, just as a review, what the financial statements mean, whether we're talking about a corporation or association or student council or something else. Just as with us, it includes an annual report, balance sheet, and financial statements with their appendices and notes for the financial period. And according to the Accounting Act, they may need to provide a reasonably sufficient and accurate description of the association's status. And when you're looking at the statements, you need to understand that for us, it contains both the financial statements for AYYE, and because we are a group that includes also AYYE Palvelut and our real estate companies, it also includes the consolidated balance sheet and financial statements, which AYYE is then includes both AYYE and those subsidiaries. KPMG is our audit company, which has completed the financial audit and provided a standard format accounting statement regarding it. This has been discussed also with the board, and they have had the opportunity to ask questions, and after which the board has signed the financial statements. And the signing was performed electronically, both by the auditing firm and the board members. The drafting of the financial statements, if you look at the financial statements, there are not any significant changes to the structure compared to the previous year. It is mostly the same. And we have our own accounting firm, Rantalainen, which has drafted the financial statements under the guidance of AYY's finance department. And for the annual report, it has been traditionally prepared by the chair of the previous year's board. And some of the statutory sections have then been drafted with the CFO, the executive director, the head of HR, and the administration from the head office. And the Finnish language financial statement is the official and signed version of it, and the translations for English and Swedish have been prepared by AYY's in-house translators. And if there are any mistakes there, then the Finnish language signed statements are the official prevailing versions. And as a reminder, regarding the REPCO's responsibilities and role regarding the financial statements, according to the statutes, the Representing Council is responsible for reviewing the reports submitted by the board on the operations and finances of the student union and deciding on any actions arising from them, as well as deciding on the approval of the financial statements and on the discharge from liability for the board and other accountable parties of the student union. And as a reminder, this is general legislation that also applies to annual general meetings for companies, for example. That is a very strong message if these matters are not approved. That usually means that the associations or the organization's management or financial administration, that there is something very significantly wrong with it. So we can have discussions about it, but it's best to consider that if these matters are not approved, that is a very significant and serious message to our organization and our operations. Then a little bit about the group's key figures, which describes our scale mostly. So the group's total income, which for us mostly consists of rental income and some membership fees as well. But rental income is the most significant section, 20.4 million euros in total income for the group in the previous year. And the thing in parentheses is always the previous year, the year before the current year's review reference figure. And the group total expenses, 20.9 million euros, and group result minus 883,000 euros. And we'll look at the reasons for these in more detail later. In the consolidated balance sheet, we have 154.9 million euros. And then liabilities 91.8 million euros, and all of the group's interest-bearing debt from financial institutions are 87.6 million euros, and these are related to student housing operations.
Ja sitten tietysti, niin kuin ehkä
And then, of course, as you may have noticed from the balance sheet figures, we don't have any big investments, haven't had any big investments last year, mostly through depreciations and amortizations. We have paid off some debt in liabilities, and then on the asset side, there have been depreciations and amortizations in the real estate side.
Ja tietysti aina kyseistä vuotta enemmän koskenut on sitten.
What is more interesting and relevant to the current year is that if there are no big investments, then what is happening on the results side? And we need to remember there that the financial statements tell us how things are, not necessarily how they should be. So the reference figures here are for the year 2023. And as I stated, the group's result in 2024 was a minus 883,000 euros. And some of these matters are such that they are accounting technical issues, and others are things that occurred during the year. If we start with the technical issues, in the other expenses of organizational activities, there is a write-off of 153,000 euros related to the development of the student center. And that is because when we are making investments and related planning, then certain accounting legislation provisions allow us to activate those kinds of expenses into the balance sheet. And as in this case, we have done. And these activatable expenses from 2020 onwards had been accrued to the total of 153,000 euros. And because the project was suspended and discontinued, then those incomes could be written off for the year in question. I can look at one of the questions from Aalto Kokoomus at this point regarding how much the student center discontinuation caused in expenses. The activatable expenses for the write-offable expenses were the 153,000 euros, as I mentioned. And there was also one person who was employed for about 3 years, which caused about 150,000 euros similarly in expenses. And those expenses were not included in these investment figures. Antti, go ahead. Yes, you can finish first. Yes, that the one person, but their expenses were not included in the investment figures because their work is not cannot be written off as those kinds of that kind of income, that kind of expense. But that was also related to the student center. If it's okay, I will also supplement this answer by saying that the planning for the student center in itself had a total expense of millions, but according to the agreement, we did not have to pay any of the planning expenses. The 153,000 euro was basically our losses from that project, and it's a significant amount of more in expenses with Acre, and we're very happy that they kept up their end of the bargain in this agreement. That was a good agreement for us at the time. That's a good addition, good clarification. And then if we look at the 2024 accounting statement, you can see in the housing operations the effect of the Otakaari 18 facelift. And if you have looked at the financial statements, I'm sure you will notice that our group's income has been a little bit less in 2024 compared to 2023. Partially that is because in Otakaari 18, during this facelift, we did not collect rent. Of course, we don't know how much the actual income would have been, but as they have returned to basically a 100% utilization rate, we're most talking about roughly 94,000 euros estimated in loss in rental income in 2024. And the project had already started in 2023. And when we compare with the previous year, about 225,000 euros more expenses were incurred in 2024 than 2023 as part of this project. And as I said, the financial statements do not can't really be compared in terms of budgets, but this project also caused about 225,000 euros in excess of the budget. And these maintenance costs are also included in the also include the planning costs of 258,000 euros from the previous year, which were used for matters such as condition surveys for Rantasauna-päiväkoti and Servimajantie, especially with Servimajantie, because we have been looking into whether all of the buildings are in the same condition and whether some upcoming comprehensive renovations can be picked out. And if we can select which building to start with, or if there is something that we need to do with all of them. And the results have been that they're pretty much in the same condition all throughout. In other expenses of the support function, we have seen some growth, mainly due to basically as the only contributing factor was the fact that the housing operations, we have the Domo system, and some development work has needed to be done with the system, so the system at least just works in general. And if we look at the fund transfers section, it's about 100,000 euros higher in 2024 than 2023. And that is more of a technical item related to the fact that in the last year we have, for certain reasons, granted more stipends and grants than in the previous year. At this point, I can also go through these two other questions that came from the Aalto kokoomus, and we can see if there are other questions at that point. There was a question about that the housing operations seem to be doing a significant loss. The ARA operations have significantly increased rents throughout Finland. Has AYYE increased their rents this year and sufficiently raised them due to the negative rental income? The answer is that we have raised rent, but as a new financial director, I feel that we have not done it sufficiently raise them. And this is something that we will definitely include in the budget planning for the next year. And this is something that when these raises have been done for a specific year, they cannot be raised again, despite if there are not significant justifications for them, which I don't think are met at this point. So we cannot immediately raise them again. But for the REPCO, for your information, if we look at the our own financial operations based on this quarter of experience, the period of 0% interest rates, which was very long in AYY's history, and I believe in any of our memories, that period of 0% interest was one where we collected even too much rental income, which meant that once the interest rates started to increase, we had very good conditions in most of our real estate companies, and we were able to use that buffer to stay in operations. And these facelifts, for example, were also started based on documentation that these kinds of facelifts are carried out with the cash we have on hand, and we don't need to increase the rent immediately. But we are not in deep trouble, but for us to be able to continue the same way without making any compromises, we are starting to see a situation where we can't continue with the same level of rental income. or we will be running a deficit, and at some point that will become impossible.
Ja sitten täällä oli toinen kysymys. Myyntisalkun siirtovoittoa tavoittelevaksi edustajisto päätti viime vuoden.
Yes, for in order to turn a profit for the investment portfolio, we decided that 300 housing portfolios would strive to make a profit, and that there is a potential to increase rents in these houses. How have you reacted to this decision by the RepCo, and have you taken any action? I believe this decision was made in last May's meeting, and unfortunately then there was a personal change. So not much was done for it, at least not anything that would have been documented. So, but now at the start of this year, we have started to take action based on this decision and defined new rents for these buildings, these properties. And according to the spirit of this decision, we decided that we could give up, that we could also rent these to non-students. But yes, these measures are still ongoing. We are going through how we can do it in practice. And for some tenants whose right to tenancy has expired and they have received the message, we have contacted them that there would now be a possibility that we are now starting to implement this decision, that they could continue their living in the buildings with these new rental conditions. I'm not sure if this was a direct quote, it's in quotes, that there is potential for rapid rental increase in these buildings, and that is true for 2 buildings, 2 properties, but not for all of them, as these properties, when looking at the delicate rental market situation, well, we did an analysis, look at the average rental level and also at the supply of rental buildings. So unfortunately, in several of these areas where these buildings are located, there is very large offering of more affordable housing in better condition. So if we were to increase the rents too much, there is a big risk that they would be empty. So if we manage to get a tenant to each apartment with these new rental levels, that would total about 320,000 euros. And when we compare that to a deficit of 850,000 euros, well, and it's not even possible to do that to get all of them filled at once. It will happen little by little that we get tenants with these new rents. Those were the questions we have received so far, and maybe it's not purposeful to go through the entire financial statement here. So if you have questions about specifics of the financial statement, I'm happy to answer. Okay, so next up, questions from the representatives regarding the financial statement. Any other questions than the ones we have heard so far? Any other groups? Yes, vapaasti vasemmalla.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja.
Thank you. Saarni from vapaasti vasemmalla. I'm asking this because I was in the Housing and Finance Committee last year, and in our last meeting, we went through AYYE's budget when in relation to the realized figures, and what was brought up was issues related especially to the real estate and housing services sector. So, and also one thing related to operational activities, one entry with a big deviation from the budget was IT services, even though only half of the year had elapsed. So are there other similar items of expense where the realized figures would be significantly different from the budget? And also as a comment,
ajasta ikuisuuteen jää vaan niinku muutamia dokumentteja.
we don't have that many permanent documents that will gotta be there forever. They are a financial statement, budget, balance sheet, action plan. So I'd hope that for the coming years, especially for the action plan projects and the report on operations, that they would have more of a dialogue with each other. Of course, we don't need to kind of produce documents that no one will see later on, but it would be good if we could have these documents could be used to better gauge how well we have succeeded this year. Yes, I think the chair of the board is writing this down, hoping that I remember your first question correctly. But yes, for the action report, even though it's a part of the financial statement, it's not something that is inspected by the auditors. They go through it and see if there's something crazy there that they comment on it, but it's not officially one of the audited documents. And for us, the report has been quite extensive, written by the previous year's chair of the board. So that could be good that they would have more of a dialogue with the action plan. But also what the community wants to do and what are the legal obligations, we have to remember those as well, and that it is not an officially audited document. And when it comes to your question about these deviations between realized figures and in the budget, was a bit different than the financial statement, but yes, the IT expenses that you mentioned were related to the Domo system that I mentioned. That's a challenge we have identified, and we will address it later on. But this kind of a development project for a system requires for us to have the resources to do that. It's a big project for a small organization. To start changing our housing system. We have now seen that the Domo system, it's not sustainable to use it because it's so expensive, but unfortunately we don't have a solution right away for that. But we have now identified the problem.
Päivittäisen toiminnan.
And for all development activities that are not necessary for the day-to-day activities of Domo, we are not taking those development measures. We will use our resources in the future system. But was it unfortunate that even if we make small changes in the Domo system, something else might break? And that's why also in the maintenance costs for the Otakaari 12 project, that also exceeded its budget. Ilmavirta? Yes. I'd like to add also from the point of view of association activities, it was quite well in budget. There were no deviations as big as this. And when it comes to the openness of information, you're correct in saying that when we present the financial statement once and the budget in December, then it's not very often this information brought to you, and we have recognized this problem. And also in the action plan, there's this entry on one line about the visualization of the data and that it would be more easily accessible. and Peer, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've had a certain system for the budgeting, and we are now replacing it with another system that does not increase costs, but it's much more modern, that we can, for example, get these graphics from there much more easily. And also more easier to get data about these comparisons, because the current system is, well, it can produce an Excel file, but that's pretty much it. No visualizations. So hopefully it would also be easier in the future to produce the kind of material that is more easily legible. Because just sending an Excel to you about oral expense items, that takes a lot of work and effort from me and Peera. Thank you. Any other questions related to this item? Okay, yhden tähden liike.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja Kahilainen.
Thank you. Kahilainen. I wanted to say this for a long time, Kahilainen from Yhden tähden liike. Finally. But yes, I have a question about these condition reports on these 3 buildings. It's great that you took a step forward in this, because it's quite surprising that there's such a big figure needed for the maintenance costs or for the renovation. Because it sounds like a very large amount of money. So what does it actually mean for the condition report? Yes, it does others than just the condition report. And is it purposeful? Well, yes and no. Now we hope that, well, now the summer break is coming up, but we will go through this after May Day with the board. And we at the office have now tried to get our investments more systematic, better planned. We're juggling many balls in the air now at the same time, so trying to put these things on a timeline, try to also think about the financing of these projects before starting them. And funding, especially for the construction of our student housing, has changed since we started the Otakaare project. So yes, it is purposeful. It does make sense to have this kind of a condition report or survey, because we need to know what the next steps are before taking them. But is it purposeful that we've done it all in 2024 in all of these buildings? Well, maybe that's not the best option. But for the investment plan, it's kind of its purpose is that, well, we will move more systematically. And then if you decide that we start this project now, we will. But if you say that we will put it aside, then we will put it aside. And if we start a project, we want to do it properly from the beginning to the end. And have kind of a mandate restrictions there that, for example, in the planning phase, we can use some kind of expenses without consulting you. But then when we actually start making the big decisions, then it's a different scenario. But for many projects, there are kind of a progress so far that we cannot take them further simultaneously. So this is a necessary work, but the question is that when we can reap the benefits of these costs. Ilmavirta? Yes, maybe this phrasing leads you to believe that this report would take up the majority of these 250,000 euros, but that's not true. Most of the money went to Servimajantie block of flats, their condition survey, when we need to do the basic renovation for them. And so that we will know in the future how much loan we have to take out for the basic renovations in the future. So this just to clarify that we would have paid 250,000 euros for this condition survey for Rantsu and Smökki. That's not true. Most of the money went to the block of flats, to this bigger building. Any other questions? If not, then I'll read out the decision. These financial statements include the management report, income statement, and balance sheet with their attachments for 2024. Chief Financial Officer Kivirvirta presented the financial statement to the board at its morning session on 24th March, after which the board had the opportunity to ask questions. The auditors completed their review of the financial statements on 28th of March without significant remarks and have stated that they will issue the auditor's report on the 14th of April. According to the financial statements, the student union's deficit for 2024 amounted to 855,968 euros and 57 cents. And in 2023, the surplus was 54,615 euros. So the proposal is that the RepCo approves the 2024 financial statements, and in addition, the RepCo decides to retain the 2024 deficit in the surplus and deficit account. Yes, this has been decided. Closing item 8, moving to item 9, audit report 2024. Kivivirta may continue.
Antti, you can pull up the Finnish audit report. The accounting report is in standard format, which is a good thing, as we have where our KPMG is the audit firm that we commissioned for these reports, and they have audited our reports and financial statements several times. And they just carry out a procedural audit of our systems, which to check that we comply not just with the Accounting Act, but also our internal guidelines, including our accounting financial guidelines, rules of procedure, these kind of things, that all of the minutes of the RepCo meetings and so on are all in the correct formats and in order. We also have open discussions regarding whether there are smaller things that should be addressed. And after that, they provide us with the auditing report, which, Antti, if you'll scroll down to the end. Or less to the end, not to the signatures. Which, based on the work we have done, we have concluded that if there had been something that we had no notes that should be reported, they would have done so, but basically they have found nothing specific to report on, so they have provided this standard format report. So there's nothing in particular to point out here, but if you're interested in the process, we can discuss that in specific. Any questions or comments about the auditing report? I don't see any. So therefore, in accordance with the section 42 of the Aalto University Student Union Constitution, states as follows in the agenda. And I propose that the Representative Council decide to take note of the 2024 audit report. Hereby so decided. Closing item 9 and moving on to item 10 on the agenda, after which we will hold a break. So granting discharge from liability to the 2024 board and other responsible parties. Here, I believe we have... Ilmavirta, go ahead. Yes, a few practical matters regarding this. First of all, here the chair has kindly created a good base proposal here, but in technical terms, there is no base proposal here from the board. So it would be recommended that one of the RepCo members would make a proposal once we get to that point in the discussion. But before that, Usually, we have also had in the procedure that the board members of the previous year have recused themselves from the meeting and left the meeting. If we want to do so this year as well, we can do so now.
Pyydän
I would like to have anyone who wishes to recuse themselves from the meeting to leave. Randers, Turkulainen, Kahilainen. I would like to ask you to leave the room for the time being.
Sieltä.
There we go. And vihreämpi aalto.
Voimme avata keskustelun.
We can open discussion.
No niin, tää kyllä lämpenee aina hitaasti.
This is always slow to warm up. Määttä from vihreämpi aalto. Just so I also know myself what we're deciding about, I want to ask a clarification regarding who all is included in this other relevant parties section. I understand that this is the executive director and the financial director, for example, but which other persons are also included in this discharge?
Tuo oli minunkin oma tulkinta tästä.
That was my understanding as well. I have not double-checked it.
Onko?
Niin, no ehkä jos käydään vielä läpi,
I believe if we will discuss this in detail, this is more of an organizational, internal thing and a matter of expressing trust. If later, of course, we find out that one of these persons has acted in breach of the legislation, this discharge doesn't have anything to do with that. Authorities can still make the act within their legislation and mandate, regardless of any discharge from liabilities. This is more just this sort of internal organizational expression of trust so that the operations can continue as they have been.
Ehkä mun paras tulkinta.
And my best interpretation for an answer to your question is that the executive director and finance director are the other persons included in this. Everyone else answers to the rest, to those of us named here. That is the hierarchy here for this decision. But like was said, this is more just a show of a thumbs up for everything's clear, that it doesn't seem that you have done anything too criminal in the last year. And not even just the things that would have been criminal or loss of trust, but such that you have acted as we have expected, and if there is nothing where we would have breached the rules or acted in contrary to the REPCO's decisions, that is a general kind of show of trust in the organization. If discharge from liability is not granted, then we need to consider what we do then. So it's sort of pumping the brakes for the operation. There needs to be some sort of justification for it. Thank you, Chair. If I can put this in plain English. This is sort of an expression from the REPCO that we haven't been left with a burning trash fire from the previous year's personnel that we need to put out immediately. That is the level of expression this is. As chair of the REPCO, I have also understood this as specifically the executive director and the finance director and the board members. Aallon Kokoomus, go ahead. Thank you. Akseli Genges from Aallon Kokoomus. I would like to propose a discharge from liability to the board members and the relevant parties. Any other groups with questions or comments? Vihreämpi Aalto, go ahead.
Ehkä Määttä olitkin.
And Matt, I believe you were coming to this as well, but And the proposal hopefully is also seconded from someone.
Ainakin siniset laput heiluvat.
Yes, I'm seeing a lot of blue tags at least. Yes, just to bring a little bit of ill will to the meeting, I would like to propose a great thumbs up to the current finance director, who, even though the board discusses their excursions very in a very restricted way, I understand the finance director has already closed a money sink of nearly €1 million during this 1 quarter of work. And the board hasn't always had the best visibility of how they spend their funds. So hopefully we will continue this way in the future with the new finance director, this policy of really presenting these possible money sinks in the budget and discussing them with the RepCo. So I am in favor of granting discharge from liability to the board members and finance director from the previous year. Understood? And I will take just a moment to consider this. And did we have more comments there? Yes, Corpoa from ProArte. I would like to also express favor to Aallon Kokoomus's proposal. Thank you. Technically, 1 vote in favor is also one time seconding the proposal is also enough. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes, thank you. I stand corrected.
Eli 1 kannatus annettu.
So 1 seconded proposal from Aallon Kokoomus. And for myself, it takes a bit of consideration of how we interpret, because we have the slightly differing proposal from Määttä. I understand that Määttä didn't particularly make a change proposal. So we have one seconded proposal. So unless there are other proposals, it will be decided in favor of in accordance with the only proposal.
No niin.
Very good. We will go on. I just wanted to be fully cognizant of the matters recorded in the minutes myself. Aallon Kokoomus, go ahead.
Ikävalko, Aallon Kokoomus.
Ikävalko from Aallon Kokoomus. Just a quick note. How many people do we have? How many representatives do we have present here? Are we quorate still? Do we still have quorum, or what's the condition? Good question. We have sufficient people. We have a few people who came in late, and the fact that some people are recused, that doesn't make us not quorate. So even if that makes us dip below the 26, it doesn't make us not have quorum. Understood? We have a seconded proposal. So I propose that the RepCo decide to grant discharge from liabilities from the board members and the responsible party as proposed by Aallon Kokoomus. So decided. We will hereby close discussion on item 10.
Pyydetään jäävit ihmiset.
We will ask the recused personnel inside. Actually, we don't need to ask them inside because we will hold a 7-minute break and we will come back to this room at 6:20. 6:20.
No niin. Saisko oven kiinni?
Yes, could you close the door, please?
Mahtavaa, huhu. Pikku allergiat iski.
A bit of allergy symptoms here.
Niin, pieni, mutta pippurinen.
Because of the birch pollen. But yes, hopefully the food was good on the break. So we'll continue with the meeting and move on to item 11, overview of the strategy work presented by Stolberg. Yes, hello everyone, I'm Ellu, the vice chair of the board, also responsible for the strategy this year. So I will tell you about the situation of the strategy work currently. Situation update. Yes, first we'll go through, well, what is a strategy? What does it mean? Well, a strategy is a long-term plan or approach that guides an organization's operations and decision-making. It defines the organization's goals, the means to achieve them, and the allocation of resources. Strategy answers questions such as what do we want to achieve, how are we going to achieve it, and what resources do we need. The current strategy was expired at the turn of the year. Each term was from 2021 to 2024. So now we have to draft a new strategy. The current one includes the following sections: vision, mission, values, and strategic goals. So, how does the strategy, what is kind of its position with other documents, and how is it different from the policy paper? So the clearest difference is that the policy paper does not prioritize our actions, but the strategy does. So the policy paper is more of a list of our views and opinions on certain issues, what we think the world should work like, and what we think others should do. And we create our statement based on it. It's more of a static document, but the strategy does prioritize our actions. What are the most important issues for us right now? What we do at AYYE and what we should do in the near future. It's a document that can be updated every 2 or every 4 or 5 years. A bit less static document. Then the next slide. Our current strategy is a 5-page PDF. You can find it by Googling AYYE strategy, AYYE strategia. I didn't put it up here in the slideshow since it's 5 pages, but here is an example page of the strategy. We did it together with the Ellun Kanat Communications Agency. So this is also their visualization, not related to me, even though my name is Ellu as well. Thank you for the laughs for this very good joke. Yes, let's move on to the next slide. So, why is the strategy updated? Well, currently the strategy is a document that has been forgotten and left in a drawer. We don't really make use of it in our everyday activities. I have written in the slides that it's likely that we want to make the strategy shorter, but actually when we sent these documents and information, I'm not sure if I still agree with this, that we should shorten it, but we'll see what happens regarding the length. But yes, we want it to be a kind of a living part of our activities so that it would actually be beneficial for our everyday operations. So that the action plan projects for coming years would be based on the strategy. We have a preliminary plan how our strategy would look like. It still contains vision, mission, and values, but instead of having these a few pages with bullet points about how AYYE is like and what AYYE should do, a bit of a confusion between sectors. Instead of that, we would have this kind of a bigger things there. Our 3 main strategic goals that would encompass all of AYYE, and then we would have sectoral goals. I believe that this would make it easier to use the strategy in our daily operations so that people responsible for the certain sector could check the strategy to see what it says about their sector and what are the related strategic objectives for the coming years. We're also planning that each sector would have these long-term plans, which could be, for example, for 5 years. And in these long-term plans, we would create another plan every year that, for example, in 2026, we will fulfill these goals. And in 2027, we will focus on these goals so that we could really kind of allocate our time and resources. That we would have these strategic objectives for a certain sector, and then in the long-term plan, we'd define the year when we work on them. I believe it would streamline the planning of action plan projects, especially at the end of the year, and we could get a clearer picture of AYY's strategy. Yes, and I think we can move on to the next slide. So at the RepCo meeting 1/2025, we had this basic outline what the strategy's development could look like this year. So first we convened the strategy working group, then we reviewed AYYE sector's feedback on the strategy, then working on the new strategy, and then having review and feedback rounds at the RepCo. But now we have a more detailed model, which is on the next slide, a more specific schedule. So I will read it out loud. Some of you may notice that we are quite a bit behind of the plan now in April, since it's now almost the end of April. But yes, for April, we intend to review the feedback from the student union and the office. We are now reviewing this feedback and also benchmarking other student union strategies to see what their strategies look like. We haven't yet reviewed canvas the office's opinions, but we'll do that next year. Then we also prepare to map out our volunteers' views in May. Then in May, we could have a brainstorming on the strategy changes, tools to implement the strategy. So for example, the annual calendar and long-term sector plans, and also mapping out the volunteers' views. Then in June, we would have the board's workshop considering the strategy content, and if we want to have new strategic goals and take a critical review of the contents. Then in August, we would have the first draft ready for the office and the board, and maybe have a sprint session for the office, which here means that the office sectors could plan their own long-term plans and give more feedback on the strategy. And then do a draft based on this for the Representative Council. Then in September, in the RepCo meeting, we would, or do we actually have a meeting already in August? No. Okay. So yes, in September's meeting, we would bring this draft to the Representative Council and gather your feedback on it and develop the strategy accordingly. Then in October, the new strategy would be approved by the RepCo, hopefully to be in good enough condition for that. And then we can start introducing the new strategy to the office. Then in November, when planning the next year action plan projects, we could have the strategy and or long-term plans included in this planning. And in December, when we have selected the new board and the new RepCo, we would orient them to the strategy, how to use it, and also how to update it and how frequently, and how to make use of it. That was my last slide, so thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions and receive comments if you have them.
Thank you. Any questions from the representative council regarding the strategy? One question over there, vapaasti vasemmalla.
Kiitos. Vapaasti.
Thank you. Turkulainen from vapaasti vasemmalla. What about the other stakeholders? Are you going to be having meetings with the other cooperative partners and boards? For example, do you see any kind of benefits in that, because you have the 2 meetings per club per year? Have you considered those? Can you clarify a little bit about what associations and cooperative partners are you talking about? The cooperative associations are called KY, TF, Profa, Tokyo. And they're specifically named as such in the rules. Sakke, did you have anything here? Yes, we'll let Sakke speak. So far, we have had a shared day with KOY and Toku, talking about the future in general terms and also discussing what the operations in accordance with our vision. And Ilmavira, did you have a comment for this specifically? Yes, and maybe this hasn't been written in the kind of level of accuracy that if something is not here, that doesn't mean that we don't also have communication with other organizations. We have other partners, such as the city of Espoo, which is a very important partner for AYYE. And there are many other organizations with which we cooperate and communicate. So the scope of this update is still sort of being calibrated. And the scope of those partnerships is also still being assessed. And Kemmo? Yes, Kosonen from Kem. Thank you for the comprehensive presentation. My question would be related to the timeline there of how much wiggle room is there, or how set in stone are these dates and months? Has it been clear to the board that this sort of document will be coming up when they have been elected? Because for me, I'm more concerned about the June and August. Is that a time period where you can get a lot of high quality work done, or is that deadline coming up too fast for approval? Yes, the board has their summer holiday in June. So June and August are basically full on at work, but in terms of wiggle room, if we need to move the timetable, then we will move it. This timeline is currently something that seems reasonable to us, but nothing is set in stone to the extent that we couldn't move it if necessary. That seems to have answered the question. Are there other questions still regarding the strategy? Ilmavirta, go ahead. Yes, about the timeline, one more comment, that the action plan project, it was an action plan project for this year, but I believe we also all agree that it's completed when it's completed. We shouldn't make a poor strategy update. We shouldn't release it before it's done. We're already sort of in a state outside of a strategy period and between strategy periods, because technically the previous strategy document ended at the end of the year. I could answer this so that when you ask certain game developers when you're releasing a certain game, then they'll just say when it's done. This is a similar kind of situation that we'll release it when it's done. but it is an action plan project for this year, and we haven't succeeded at it if it's not done this year. But that is certainly the objective. And Conergia, go ahead. Seppälä from Conergia, thank you. On the first slide, you had mentioned there that this previous strategy, that would be the third slide, I suppose. Somewhere it mentioned that the old strategy document had been forgotten sort of in the as a work in progress. If it hasn't been very relevant for 4 years as a operative management document, if it hasn't been relevant for the last 4 years, then why is it relevant now? And should we spend 8 months updating it? Thank you for the question. I have also been thinking about that at the point where we started the process, and I came to the conclusion that the greatest value in the strategy work is that I'm trying to find a place where I can face you while talking. The greatest value isn't related to how the strategy document itself is changed, but how it is implemented in the future. Currently, the action plan project, we spent quite a lot of time preparing the action plan projects at the end of the year, about 2 months each. And I believe that's a lot of working hours and a lot of money from AYYE to plan out those projects. And if we can expedite that process, it would be very good. And we could use the autumn working hours for more reasonable ends. So I would say the greatest value is from how the strategy is implemented in the future, and to ensure that the long-term goals are also included in the strategy. Thank you for the question. Ilmavirta, a quick comment. I'm talking too much today, but in the current strategy document, we also have the challenge that it has 9 good and 10 fairly good proposals. So we sort of it's very vague. And the idea that we condense it more and make it more of a sector-specific document when people and designate people who are specifically responsible for making sure that these matters keep progressing. The current document, in comparison to that, is something that it doesn't really have a lot of very strong tools for managing, where it has strong exclusions or prioritizations. Those can be improved. One more comment, go ahead. Thank you, Chair of the Representative Council and my fellow council members. It's nice to see that the strategy is always updated. It's a good steering and guidance document that AYYE, I believe, needs. And over the years, we have had a lot of very good wishes and concerns and requests, but here we can at least make some of them true. So it's nice to see that the strategy is being updated. I wanted to immediately give you a comment that if you want to look at which direction AYYE should take in terms of personnel counts or prioritizing, or whether AYYE should be a real estate or office or student housing business, what the prioritization should be, now is a very good time to place objectives regarding those prioritizations so that it doesn't then surprise us in 1 year or so. But I wanted to also emphasize that with the current administrative and management structures of AYYE, I'm a little bit concerned about how the implementation of the strategy, where that strategy document will actually lead in terms of management. Currently, it feels like such an employee-led operation in terms of our head office that there might be room for sparring and development there. I hope that the board takes big steps in development there. And I hope that the board spends a lot of time to figure out a good strategy, and we can see this in the implementation next year. Thank you for the comments. I see a lot of blue slips here, a lot of agreement here, and I believe that the board will take note of these comments. As the chair of the Representative Council, I have also encouraged the group leaders as well for May to discuss what they want from the strategy, because the autumn will be a busy season. Usually the May after May Day, after Vappu, will have a little bit more time to spare. So try to have your meetings now. And myself as well, as a previous Representative Council and board member, I would ask that you send in your requests and proposals sooner rather than later, so that we have time to respond to them and that the Representative Council's voice can be properly heard. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any right now. So I will then propose that we decide that the Representative Council has taken note of the discussion regarding the overview of the strategy work. So decided. We'll move on to agenda item 12, which is the future purpose and renovation plan for the central office. At this point, I would like to ask people to keep you fairly condensed in terms of your presentations. I feel like there may be discussions regarding this, that we have at least one opinion already posted here. So we'll try to keep the dialogue as condensed as possible and try to avoid repetition, but I hope that everyone has their voices heard regardless. We'll start with Ilmavirta's presentation.
Mikki päällä. Nyt se on päällä, eikö ookin?
The microphone is on. You can hear me.
Potkin tän näytön sitten taas toisinpäin vuorostani.
And I will again move the monitor. Today's physical exercise is coming from moving this monitor.
Kiitoksia edustajisto.
Thank you, Representative Council. Yes, the central office, the head office, is familiar to all of us who have been there to pick up keys, who has worked there in various kinds of roles, in its various roles. And regarding to that, we wanted to ask you for some opinions and also take a pulse regarding. We're going to be presenting the progression of the facilities and space project, especially related to the events of last autumn and early this year, where we have had the preliminary votes for regarding the policies of the board employee management. Right now, do we have a good policy, or do we need additional reports or studies regarding other potential options, which can be anything that we can discuss later on related to the purposes of use for the head office? And I want to emphasize that we are not deciding today regarding the timelines of the renovation, the details of the plans or the budget for it, nothing like that. And that is why I also hope that you don't spend too much time you don't get too attached to the plans and their details when I will show you them later. So I don't want us to have discussions about whether it's good to have the meeting room in one corner or the other. The time for those discussions will be later on, depending on how we want to proceed with this project. And this will be a tentative preliminary vote regarding whether you agree with the current policy and the current direction or not. And Vera also mentioned the investment plan. Once we move forward with the investment plan would have the kinds of investment plans that they would, whether or not they match with your expectations, so that we don't spend too much time planning something that we don't want to carry out. And I will also give you a brief overview that when I talk about the office, I mean the employees and our managers' opinion that the head office would be renovated roughly to match the same purpose of use as it is right now. So for the use of the employees, volunteers, and members. And we would stop with the investigation of the other possible options such as moving the head office somewhere else or having the event space at the head office. And I will give you more details about those later on and why we have come to this conclusion. And as a reminder, this is the Otakari 25 head office, because right now we have just one office, and in the history we used to have multiple offices. That's why we call it the head office, regardless, despite us only having the one office.
Eli historiaa.
And a bit of a history. AYYE has, for a longer time, had two challenges, I would say. One is that the Keto head office has been fairly well loved. It is worn down. For a long time, nothing has been done there in terms of renovations or repairs. Of course, it has been maintained to the extent that if a toilet is out of order, then we've fixed it. But nothing has been done with, for example, the surfaces or for a long time. We've just washed these carpets that have been fairly worn through to make them look somewhat okay. For example, the cabinet project that the board carried out last year. I don't believe we were talking about renovations there. When we talk about renovations here, we're talking about basic, substantial, comprehensive renovations. And it doesn't really provide very good working spaces for modern office work or very good spaces for the volunteers either at the head office. The other point is that the capacity of the premises are fairly challenging right now, and the newer event space, the celebration hall, there has been demand for another event space to rent out because the current Mökki event space has had a fairly high utilization rate for its capacity. And there's also been the proposal that the employees and volunteers move to Otakeskus. And currently we're building Otakari 15 and 13 and 11, roughly opposite from Otakari 18, where the bus stop is at. And a new event space will be built in the basement, the cellar of that building. The student center was something that we discussed mostly with KOU and TF, where we had a volunteer lounge, not really any storage space or workspaces for the volunteers, and in cooperation with Aalto, some common recreational spaces, hanging out areas for students. And the student center project, as we know, was discontinued last summer, and the Otakari 11 event space, that is also a fairly expensive project. Last time I asked for a best estimate today from the manager in charge of that project, and it was at 2.2, 2.4 million as this kind of level of accuracy. And when it's in the residential buildings, that also means a high risk of whether the sound dampening can be made as good as it needs to be to not disturb the residents. And whether when people go outside to have for a smoke, then does that make disturbances as well? And as we have discussed these previously, related to the construction of buildings, Otakari 15 was finally initiated because we got a good price for the project. But will the same thing reflect the Otakari 13 when we have had significant changes in the ARA systems, for example? We're not sure whether that can proceed in the timeline we originally planned, within roughly 2 years or so. And similarly, Otakari 11 will be a significantly larger building and project, and it will be significantly more expensive, therefore. So where we don't know whether we have the risk-bearing capacity for taking tens and tens of millions of euros more debt to work on these projects at the 2 years per building pace. So whether the Otakari 11, just from the housing capacity point of view, it may be delayed significantly. It would take at least years, but that's an optimistic estimate right now. it would be roughly 6 years, I believe, is the current optimistic estimate, and everything from there on is possible. Then what happened in the autumn 2024, we started these 2 lines of investigation, where one would be that Ghetto would serve as the current purpose, with the current purpose, but better, that it would be renovated to match pretty much the current purposes of use, and we also included Perko, our partner for planning. I will tell you a little bit about that later. And another option was that the Ghetto as a student house option, which Veeti also presented to you towards the end of the year last year. And that the idea there would be to have a house for students and members, and then upstairs we would have the Mökki 2.0, so the second event space. And the downstairs would be the volunteers member space, and the office would be somewhere else. And with the office, we again mean, in this case, we would mean the board and the employees. And the options for where that somewhere else would be, we looked at that into that with Acre and with Perko. We looked at the options for whether the event space could be at the head office, whether that would be possible. If we don't care about what it costs, then how would it be possible?
So first about the second option. Well, the problem is that the upstairs, this vault cannot be completely demolished because then the ceiling would come down. It's a load-bearing structure there. It cannot be demolished. And Perko's the designer, from their perspective, Veeti sent you an attachment regarding this, one idea what it could look like. I'll show it to you a bit later. Are these designers' idea if this vault would not be demolished?
Siis Petrin kiinteistöpäällikön näkemys ja
And Petri, our real estate managers or the board's perspective is that it would be too small. The space would not fulfill the demand for this kind of a party venue. So the party venue being upstairs would not fill this position as Smökki 2.0. And as an office space somewhere else, we looked into that with Acre, and Acre gave us 2 options. So there's this building next to the office, so this kind of the side closest to us, so this A blank, and then also the premises of Dipoli, or that it may be in the Päälafka, but they said that there's not enough space there. So if it will be in the same kind of a space with the university management, we could see some synergy benefits, but not in this case. And from these options, the A blank end is just too small. It's not suitable for our use. That's not an option. The designer looked at it and said that, yeah, this is too small. And in Dipoli, we would fit there. And the designer said that, yes, there's enough space. But the challenge there is that its rent would be about 150,000 euros per year with these square meters and the discussions we've had with Acre.
Ei ole kannatusta näille ehdotuksille nyt tällä hetkellä toimiston sisällä. No sit se Keton remonttivaihtoehto.
So we do not support the continuation of these plans. Then for the Keto renovation, we talked with the Perko designer. They interviewed all AYYE's teams and the board and the section chiefs in the late fall of 2024. So what people said that are challenging or problems for the current central office is that it would be more easily accessible to members. Because now we're open for 3 hours, 3 times a week. So that's not very accessible or open. Then this kind of borders for volunteers and employees, people saw it as good that they would be in the same place. So that we wouldn't kind of put volunteers and employees even further apart. But what the borders mean is that now downstairs, volunteers' workspace and the office people's break room, they kind of they're the same place. So then it's not a good place for either party, as an example. So there's going to need for better functioning break rooms, better functioning member service point. Then there are also some acoustics problems. Someone talks in a workroom, in an office, the people next door can hear it. So not good for confidential discussions. And so based on these discussions, the designer drew up the first very preliminary designs.
Ja sitten se suunnittelija teki semmoiset, tässä on mun ensimmäinen drafti tyyliset kuvat.
Kind of the very first drafts.
Kuvia on tänä vuonna käytetty työntekijöillä ja hallituksella.
And we've shown these images, these outlines to employees in the office and received comments, but we didn't order kind of new designs because they cost money. So no updated designs, updated pictures with these comments taken into account. So the things I will show you are for the first draft. And there are some problems in them, but we didn't want to use more money for new drafts because we're not just sure what option we'll end up with if we end up moving to Dipoli, for example. But yes, please take into account that these drafts, they are very preliminary, and I hope that you will not focus too much on their details. So the idea is that the upstairs would be for employees. So there was a lot of feedback about the open office, that we want to have such a big open office, or would be better to have team-specific workspaces. But the idea here is that if we put a door here and the customer comes in, they can get to the service point, but can't get to these kind of places where they don't need to go. So to these employee premises, they can only be accessed with the keys. But the current problem with the central office is that when you enter the door, you can go pretty much anywhere. Some individual workrooms are locked, but can really kind of go to any place once you get in. And that's not very good. And that's why it's more difficult to have longer opening hours for our customers, for the members, because someone has to keep an eye that they don't go to places where they're not supposed to. So that would be a good option here, a good bonus here in this option, that is. But yes, we have workstations, conference rooms, service point, kind of things that you have at an office space. Then for the downstairs, that would be for volunteers. So that once you enter here from this door, then here and here, there could be doors there so that the people who come in cannot access places where they're not supposed to be. So then we could have this front door more open for a longer time. Members could hang out here, drink coffee. And the designer also thought that maybe he could have these silent workspaces for doing schoolwork. And we talked about this a lot at the office, and we thought that maybe in practice what would happen would be that most of them would be kind of taken up by volunteers. And one good comment we received was that could we build an elevator? That's a good idea, because that would make it more accessible. It's not accessible now.
tämmöisiä niin kuin esimerkkejä mainitakseni niistä palautteista.
And could we have, for example, one dressing room instead of two ones? So that's why these are kind of comments made on this that we are aware of, but didn't want to order a new design based on the comments. So here, the office thought about making kind of changes to this design. I mean, this would be here, the cabinet would be here, producers would be here, and things like that. So this just shows that don't think that these are kind of locked in, that these are the final plans. They're not. So that the idea is that we want to be more easily approachable to our members and that volunteers would have better facilities downstairs and employees would have better facilities upstairs. And so what we want to ask you about your opinion is on renovating the central office at some point to somewhat to this direction that you could see from the designs, whether you think it's a good idea or do you want to look into other options than renovating it, which would mean using the office for some other purposes and then having the actual office somewhere else than where it is now. A few comments before the vote related to Veeti's message email, where there's some questions that I'd like to answer now. One was that have you looked into an option of having Keto out in Otagari 13 on 11, that the central office would be there? We have looked into it, and for Otagari 13, the time for that has passed because the planning there is so far ahead that we would really have to go back on the plans a lot. Also, there are no parking spaces there. It would also take up a lot of apartments from that building. For Otagari 11, from the point of view of the planning, it would not be an impossible option. But when I talked about other challenges related to Otagari 11, when the building will be finished, or will it be finished? That's a big question. So it would not solve the problem in years. Also asked this building or real estate manager what they think, how much it would cost to build the central office in a building like that. And they said that give or take pretty much the same cost as building a separate building somewhere else. So it's there are really no synergy benefits there to have it in a pre-existing building. So I think the best option is moving forward with as proposed and for Smökki to looking into whether we could find somewhere a place to have a whole new building that would be Smökki too, because it would not even be more expensive. And also if it be located somewhere else than in the basement of a block of flats, that would also remove some problems. I think we should look for a better solution for this party space in somewhere else, but that's my opinion. And now also I want to ask before the questions whether you want to see the comparison pictures Veeti had presented on the party space when compared to our designers. Okay, I'll show you them from my own laptop. They're not in the official slides. Okay, here we have Veeti's proposal that you have also received in your email. So, and Perko's designer their idea what the festive space could be like.
Et jos se olisi,
So if it would be so that the vault cannot be demolished, in that case, their plan, the outline is like this. The toilets would be in pretty much the same place, and the kitchen would be pretty much in the same place. Their idea was that it would kind of about 150 places where people can see the stage, and then some amount of spaces where you can see the stage as well. So act for a very rough estimate of the expenses. So Petri said that it really depends on how much we have to do renovation at the same time, whether we renovate the plumbing, for example. But Petri's very rough estimate was that Keto's renovation, so that we would also do the technology, upgrade it, have it a better space for employees and volunteers, that would cost hundreds of thousands to 1 million. And if we change Keto so that we would have to change the ventilation, kitchen, sewering, that would be about 2 million, so twice the amount, if it would be turned into this more of a festive space.
Eivät ole niin, tai mä laitan sen toisen esityksen takaisin sitten.
Yes, and I'll put the original presentation back here. Yes. Okay, opening discussion on this. Request for the floor. Yes. YTL, YTL. Yhden tähden liike, that is. Kahdelainen for yhden tähden liike. Some genius sent you this plan and a message. Hopefully you have read through it. I will not quote the message, but I have this idea. If we have 1,000 square meters of free space in a prime spot, not in Malmi, but in Alvari-aukio, the Keto, what would be the best use for it from a student's point of view and a member's point of view? I think it would be better that it would be an open space for members rather than an office. So this is my opinion.
Tällä puheenvuorolla on avattu keskustelu asiasta.
Yes, now we have opened the discussion. Next we have Vapaasti vasemmalla and then we have Kyltäri Rankas. Thank you, Turkulainen from Vapaasti vasemmalla. So Represent Council forms their decision on big lines and big money issues. So the community has said that there's a need for Smökki 2.0 already now, and the Keto could be a place for it in addition to the volunteer spaces, and then the central office could be moved somewhere else, for example, Dipoli. That's my opinion. Thank you, Kyltäri Rangas, and then Konergia. I have a question. You said that the A blank, it was too small. So how many square meters is it then? And the slides about the renovation for Keto, it was mentioned that it would be good that all who want their own workstation would get one. So is it always that is everyone there simultaneously at some point? Do we need 57 workstations? Is there a need for it? Does it make sense to have that? Or does it actually make sense that AYYE employs 57 people? Of course, it also includes the 10 board members, but yeah. Ilma Virta, do you want to answer this? Yes, it says 57 workstations, but it doesn't mean that we have 57 people working who need a workstation. That was the designer's plan, some amount of workstations, and it was 57. That's also a draft. But what I mean by this is that we have employees who work also mostly remotely, and they do not need their own workstation. But do I need one? Since I'm just running around from one meeting to another? Maybe not. But what it means is, or the wish we heard, would that we wouldn't kind of force people into this company-like flexi business model where you have to take all your stuff away from the desk so that someone else can take over. But rather those who want to work at the office, they would have their fixed workstation where that they would have their stuff there and personalize it according to their liking. So that's the idea here. And when it comes to the A blank space, it doesn't fit 57 workstations or doesn't need that many, but it needs more than 0 workstations. I don't remember the actual square meters, but it's quite small because there's also the terveystalo there, and that's not moving away. So it's just a couple of offices that Acre could give up. So the designer said that, well, maybe there's space for the workstations, but not spaces for conference rooms in addition to that. And we do need those. So there's just not enough space for these conference rooms and workstations to serve the needs of our board members and employees. Yes, thank you. Yes, 300 square meters is the, yes, next Conergia and the Luova.
And then Aallon kokoomus. Seppälä from Conergia. About the Dipoli renting it out, similar thoughts to the previous speaker. Have you considered charging it with the 60 workstation recovering from Dipoli? And similarly, if it doesn't have all of the university employees or the teaching staff there anymore, then don't we have all of the cards for negotiation to lower the rent? The square footage there, the premise used there, the amount of space needed is planned based on pretty much the same functions as we have right now. Some renovations there, but otherwise even if we remove the people who are mostly working remotely, that still doesn't make a material difference. The 57 workstation number, you shouldn't focus on that too much. And in the price proposal that we have for right now is already the product of several rounds of negotiation. It would have been great for the university to think that in the name of our cooperation, we can give you this for use at more favorable terms. But the university has constantly pretty much had the opinion that it is not. The foundation can't just do that. That they need to require give or take the market price from us, and this is already basically below the market price in the proposal. So there is not more room to negotiate there in that option. Fantastic, thank you. And then we have Luova, Aallon kokoomus, and then Kem after that. Thank you. Jantti from Luova. I also, as a person who's working as a planner and designer in the private sector, I know I'm very familiar with how much it costs to move these plans and keep making them back and forth. But in the spirit of trying to solve this problem, I want to give this proposal that previously we have discussed the OPGE and the Maarintalo building, and that option was discontinued because our partners left that project. But if we forgot about Ghetto, the head office, and we forgot about Otakari 11, and we tried to put everything into that option, possibly even more student spaces, a tech lounge, something that we have in Otaniemi. Do you have any comments for this kind of option? This is something that we have thought about to some extent, in some length, when we still had the idea of whether we could live together with KYTF somewhere else. I think technically it would be possible. I'm not sure if Acre has found another use for that space yet, but the price tag, Veeti, do you remember? You're better with numbers. Do you remember what the price for Marintalo was? I think we have an answer to this from somewhere else.
Palmqvist
from Kulttuurirengas, it was very expensive. If we wanted to renovate the event space and everything there, all the support we needed there, if I don't remember wrong, it was somewhere along the lines of with the needs-based renovation, it would be 15 million roughly for the renovation, plus 5 million on top if you wanted to buy it. So that's pretty much the scope of it. Yeah, so in terms of its expenses, it wouldn't have been cheaper than building just a new head office. I remember that from the discussions as well at the time. And because we already have a building that is perfectly adequate, then buying that additional building would be an exceptionally expensive endeavor. Then Siren, Alan Kokoomus, after which we have Kem. Thank you, dear chair, dear fellow democratically elected representatives. As my first point here, I would say that these are fairly expensive in terms of employee solutions. We wonder if we even have the capacity for reducing the number of employees, but we have to consider that as well. As a meta comment, I'm a little bit concerned about why the discussion bringing this discussion to the Representative Council basically required someone to sound the alarm on the board that this is a matter that a few of these investigative strands had been forgotten in the last year and then brought up again this year. We're not sure if we have even received information for this year's board regarding all of these reports. But I would say that currently these seem to be based on gut feelings for all of these options, so we can't make a very informed decision based on them as a representative council member, which of course I wanted to make sure people realize here. Thank you for the comment. Do you want to respond? Yes, just as a bit of a defense, I'm not sure which investigative lines you're talking about, but the Otokari 13 and 11, I didn't proactively raise those as options because I felt they were so unlikely that they could proceed. But the event space option has been extensively studied and has been discussed with the board as well in recent times. So if you're indicating that that option has not been discussed as a feasible option, that we have discussed it. Thank you. Then Kem and Vihreämpi Aalto. Sorry, my apologies. We'll take Kem Voga, then Vihreämpi Aalto. Thank you. Kosonen from Kem. I have one question related to Dipoli. There was a very convincing reason as to why we could not have the head offices in the Otokari 13 and 11. But did I understand correctly that with Dipoli, the only reason was just the price tag? Was there anything else there in terms of issues with the facilities, the spaces, or is it just that 150,000 euros per year is too much of a red flag? it was a significant contributing factor. 150,000 euros per year is a very significant amount of money. That's every year until ad infinitum, until the rent is raised, and then it's more. But we didn't have a too comprehensive of an investigation there. We asked our planner to give an estimate as to whether these spaces would be sufficient for the purposes that we are already doing now at the head office, for the board and the employees and the volunteers. And the answer was, yeah, that would be possible. So that was the extent of the study. But as to whether the 150,000 euros per month is a lot of money, and that would be a significant expense, as to whether or not, for example, we're not sure if we have an extra 150,000 euros a year lying around. I'm skeptical in terms of that. And if we did have it, what else could we spend it on? So personally, it comes ultimately to the idea that if we're looking at the Mökki 2.0, I believe we can accomplish it somewhere else with more reasonable expenses than moving to Dipoli permanently. That is my summary. I like the idea that we would have the student house, but the idea that we would basically commit to for indefinitely to that expense of minus 150,000 euros per year when we're already 880,000 euros in deficit for this year. That feels like a poor option. Then Voga. Thank you, Branders from Voga. Just maybe a comment about A blank, because you said the facilities were too small, to my understanding, especially if the entire office was moved as is. But we also had the question of, for example, have you considered what would it look like based on if we combined the premises of the current head office and A blank? Is that an office that has? Is that an option that has been looked into? Otherwise, I'm not too convinced that the representative council has a sufficient understanding of the other options. I would hope to have more examinations of them. And as a general comment, a decision that the decisions regarding Otke was made very boldly with community first. And I hope that with this, we can continue holding that perspective when we're making decisions about spaces and premises. I hope we hold on to that community-based ambition. I see a lot of votes in favor there as well. Yes, I would like to comment briefly on that the in the idea with the A blank included, that would be in the option where the office would be at A blank, the volunteers would be in A blank, and the event space would be upstairs, and that would not be enough space for all of those functions. Then, of course, if you can move some of those elsewhere, that doesn't solve the Mökki 2.0 problem. That introduces the I blank rental costs on top of the other operations. So we have not considered the option where both premises would be in use by us and the event spaces would be elsewhere, because the costs there, unless those square meters are used constructively, we don't have a plan for that. Okay, then Vihreä Aalto, and if ProArte, I believe, hasn't used their first request for the floor.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja.
Thank you, Chair. Dear representatives, I have a dream. And now that we are bringing the strategy to the table and we have been encouraged to make long-term decisions and strategic choices, and include the strategic objectives in our decision-making, these kinds of students' and dreams are then at the heart of the decision-making. And as Randers very clearly said earlier, that the community first, bold community first decisions, those are ones that we should be holding close in terms of our strategic objectives. And my dream is that in the springtime, we will go to Dipoli. It will not be necessarily next spring or the spring after that, but in the spring, we will go to Dipoli. Dipoli is an important building in Otaniemi, both architecturally and just in a concrete and physical sense. It is a very dominant force in the Otaniemi landscape and cityscape, and the student union has built it with its own hands for us students, and we have had it built ourselves for ourselves. And the idea that the point that it's currently owned by the university is wrong. The financial realities have driven us to this point, but if we have the opportunity, we should consider in our strategy that we want to operate in Dipoli because we have built it for ourselves. And if we are vigilant, even though the price tag may be high at this point, I fully believe that if we are fully vigilant, it may be that we are able to find various kinds of office spaces in the eastern port harbors, ports where we are already paying that kind of money. So if we can route those funds into the Dipoli rent, the 150,000 euros a year doesn't sound as expensive anymore. But that is my dream. Thank you for sharing your dream. Any responses to this? No? ProArte, did you have a request for the floor? No, not at this point. Any other relevant comments to these previous comments? Luova, go ahead.
Kiitos, Jantti.
Thank you, Jantti from Luo. Based on this discussion, of course, we are going into the realm of speculation constantly because, of course, the level of planning is where it is and the estimates are estimates. And we are constantly working based on just gut feeling estimates. But based on this discussion, the renovation of the head office to its current purposes seems like a sensible option. It would undergo basic renovations to be used as the office and then anything else that the spaces are sufficient for. But at the same time, we should somehow think of a plan for the event space. I believe it's not the correct choice to just have it kick the can down the road somewhere to be considered by the next generation of where should we have our event spaces. For example, the idea that it would be built somewhere entirely different, not in Otakari 13 or 11, but it would be, I think that's a good idea, but we would need to have a realistic idea of where to go. We don't have a lot of spare land lying around here, and it's always a separate expense to purchase land and start a construction project there. We need to have some sort of more long-term plan for it before we can actually lock in these plans. The interpreter cannot hear the microphone at this time.
Noniin, nyt.
Now the microphone is on. Sorry, I didn't probably formulate that well enough in my presentation, but you have said it very clearly here. So some of the idea of why we are talking about this right now in this form is that if the majority were to clearly favor one or the other option here, then even if they were to favor the blue very, very clearly, then we could focus our fairly limited investigation and report resources as to what the other option for Mökki 2.0 would be. And then we wouldn't need to run these two projects in parallel. We would have a more clear view of the future. The other option is that we keep trying to look into all of these options at the same time, and that always fragments our planning resources to some extent.
Kiitos.
Thank you. We heard some of the background there as well. Any other comments from the representative council at this time for this subject? Kim, go ahead. The interpreter cannot hear the... there it is. Thank you. Palo from Kim. I have a concern here. It feels that we should somehow urgently move forward with this matter. And if 150,000 a year for office spaces is a large amount of money, based on this amount of information, are we ready to pay how many million, 2 million euros for renovating the office into an office? So I think it would be good to do a bit more of that background research and reports. I think we've heard good comments about what will happen to the event space if we take this option. Of course, I don't work at the office. I can't say whether you are really urgently working on this, but it feels like from our perspective that the need for an event space would be more urgent right now rather than the need for new office space. Thank you. And a quick response there from Ilma Virta. Yes, that is why we also didn't bring anything to for you to decide regarding the details of the plans or the budget for or the timeline for the head office. That it will be the time for that will be in a later discussion, definitely. And my idea here was why I didn't wanted to bring this to the board and to the representative council is that if you have a strong preference toward one or the other option, then that will guide what we're doing here from here on. If you don't have a strong preference, if you have a fairly divided vote or a lot of abstentions, that will also indicate that, okay, clearly the matter is too early, we don't have enough information, and then we'll react based on that as to what this indicative preliminary vote tells us. And so in that sense, we are not committing to any very big decisions at this point. We are just looking into your opinion and charting your opinion and whether you are favoring one or the other of these options. Okay, and do we have any closing words before we move on to the indicative vote? Luova, go ahead. Thank you. Kanniainen from Luova. And yes, I would like to one more time clarify when you talk about the red option and, for example, going to depoly. To my understanding, that wouldn't just be the 150,000 a year. That would also mean the significantly more expensive renovations for the head office, which would include the Mökki 2.0, cramming it into that project, which doesn't necessarily even mean it would succeed. And maybe if in the Mökki 2.0 construction in the head office is fundamentally a bad idea, then we don't really have any reason to remove the head office from there either. So why would we then need to pay for having the office somewhere other than at the office? Thank you. Yes, we'll see if there are any other closing words, and then I may give Ilma Virta the floor for the responses. Any other closing words from the other groups? Anything you want to say before we move on to the vote? Now is your last chance to speak. Apologies, I didn't see you here, Connor. Seppälä from Conergia. I'm not speaking for all volunteers, but from the perspective of one volunteer myself, I would hope that the volunteers would have a space for work and for event spaces, despite otherwise than the employees, the volunteers use them both in the morning and the night shift. I don't see any other hands raised from the groups, so Ilma Virta, your final closing words, please. Regarding the Kanniainen's comment, both our professional planners and the real estate director, the construction director, said that the event space at the head office Keto is a bad idea, so take that as you will. And what comes when it comes to the going to Dipoli, the 150,000 euros a year has been calculated based on the rental level and the amount of square footage we have right now. But we would need to probably have some sort of renovation there as well for it to be suitable for us. And we haven't assessed those kinds of expenses, so that is certainly included there as well. Thank you. Then we will move on to the indicative vote, where the base proposal is that the head office be renovated in the future to serve as the office, and the employees, board members, and volunteers, and we will stop the assessment of the other options. So if you vote for the blue, if you wish for us to focus on the ghetto renovation for office use, and maybe the other proposals here, and you will vote red if you wish for the other options to be further assessed. If I have understood this correctly. Yes. And you will vote white if you don't have a preference between those two options. Is everyone clear on the voting parameters? Seems so. You may now vote.
Selvä.
Okay. I don't think we need vote counters. Housing Council thinks that we should look into other options and bring these options up to the Representative Council. Okay. Do we have any more comments for this item before closing it? Yes, vihreämpi Aalto.
Kiitos.
Thank you.
Vihreämpi Aalto. Tällainen lyhyt kommentti vaan, että
short comment. Hope that in the future we could see more financial figures in the material we receive beforehand. So now we just get some kind of talking about millions here and there. We really don't see the big picture and see here in writing about the costs of different options. Yes, thank you. And then we didn't include them because we really can't know yet what the figures will be. It is in such an initial stage that the kind of only figure that is even a little bit certain is 150,000 euros for the Dipoli rent. And I kind of thought that you will ask about these financial figures, and that's why before this meeting I asked for these rough estimates. So based on the vote result, it seems that we should also look into different cost effects, cost implications of the different options in more detail. Yes, on yhden tähden liike.
Kailainen YTL. Ihan tämmöinen kokoustekninen juttu, ei ole mikään hauska juttu.
The kind of a technical meeting thing. The text says that the proposal is that we will renovate it and give up the other options. So hopefully this is not the decision we will make. So just kind of what we will enter into the minutes here, because we didn't decide to renovate it. Alakokoomus. And also hope to see the minutes on this, because for the last year and the year before that, not all minutes exist. They are not available on the AYYE website. They may be on SharePoint, but not all representatives have access there, so not all minutes are available on the website. Yes, very good point. We'll write this down. And Ilma Virta? Yes, the decision is that we will enter the discussion into the minutes. And the presentation text is what it is, but we will enter into the minutes the discussion and the vote result. So that the minutes will really reflect your thoughts.
Onko vielä jotain kommentteja, mitä haluaa, että
Yes, any other comments? that you want to be entered into the minutes?
Jos haluaa jotain suuntaviivoja vielä jättää. Ei näytä.
Any kind of advice? Apparently no. So we will enter the discussion regarding the future of the central office into the minutes based on what we discussed. Closing item 12, moving into item 13, other business. So, for the next meeting, it will be chaired by Vice Chair Tiihonen instead of me. So let's put all difficult issues at the next meeting for Tiihonen.
Muuten, onko muita esille tulevia?
Any other business?
On Aallon kokoomuksella.
Yes, Aallon kokoomus.
Kuuluuko? Joo. Sundqvist, Aallon kokoomus.
Sundqvist. Aallon kokoomus wants to wish everyone a very good and laid back vappu. Yes, thank you. I all hope that vappu will be like that. Yes.
No niin, ei muita esille tulevia asioita.
Seems there is no other business, so we can move to item 14, closing of the meeting. So I will close the meeting at 7:43. Have a great May Day week, everyone, and a great vappu.